Did the Civil Rights Act of 1960 for truly end Jim Crow in America? Did the Civil Rights Act of 1960 for truly end Jim Crow in America? This question invites us to look back at a significant moment in history. The Civil Rights Act of 1960 was a landmark law that aimed to eliminate racial segregation and discrimination in various aspects of life. It outlawed practices in public accommodations, employment, and federally funded programs. This law was a major victory for civil rights activists who had fought tirelessly for equality. Before this act, Jim Crow laws were prevalent, particularly in the southern states. These laws enforced racial segregation under the misleading idea of separate but equal. In reality, they created inferior conditions for Black Americans in schools, transportation, and even voting rights. The Jim Crow system was deeply rooted in society and was designed to maintain white supremacy while limiting the freedoms of Black Americans. With the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, many of these legal structures began to crumble. The law prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It also empowered the federal government to enforce desegregation, allowing the Justice Department to take action against discriminatory practices. This marked a turning point in the fight for racial equality. However, while the act legally ended segregation, it did not completely erase the social and economic inequalities that persisted. Many people continued to resist these changes, and informal segregation remained in housing, education, and employment. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 followed, addressing barriers that had suppressed Black political participation, such as literacy tests. The Civil Rights Act of 1960 was a monumental achievement in the struggle against institutionalized racism. It represented the culmination of decades of efforts by Black leaders, activists, and communities who challenged Jim Crow laws. Yet, the end of these laws did not mean that racial injustice was over. Ongoing activism and further legal changes were necessary to tackle the remaining inequalities. In summary, the Civil Rights Act of 1960 legally ended Jim Crow segregation in many areas, marking a historic victory for Black Americans and the civil rights movement. However, the broader social and economic effects of Jim Crow continued to impact lives, showing that the journey toward true equality was far from complete.